Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host. I'm also the creator and the moderator of thechocolateLife.com. What I'd like to remind everybody before we jump into today's episode is that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, as every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by members of the Chocolate Life. If you're not a member of the Chocolate Life, please go over there and become a member today. There's always a free option, and I don't do ads. I don't do any kind of like obtrusive commercial sponsorship, and so your membership in the Chocolate Life is the way you support what it is that we do here on Pod Save Chocolate and on the chocolatelife.com itself. And with all that, what I want to do is jump in to today's episode this is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com right now. You can go there. And for every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I create a dedicated post, which provides links and background and history and all that kind of stuff for each episode. And so you can follow along with this post if you can, or you can always refer to it at a later date. And if you're watching live, participating live, please go into the live chat on YouTube or the comments on Facebook and LinkedIn and let me know where in the world you're connecting from. I'll get that shout out up on the screen to say thank you very much. And if you have a comment or a question about anything that goes on, you can put it into the comments as well. I'll get that question asked and answered. If it is a question or if it's a comment, I'll get it up on screen and we can address it before the end of the episode. Before we begin with today's episode, what I want to do is I want to go back to the episode from this previous Tuesday, and where we talked about the 2024 Craft Chocolate Challenge Awards. I was joined by Dustin Cornett, who's the founder of the awards, Lila Carvajal of Cocoa Supply, who is the sponsor of the Innovation Awards, and then two of the judges, Max Gandy and Ernie Glazer, two of the other judges. We had a chance to go through every single one of the winners and to discuss a little bit about our thoughts about the judging process. We played some videos from some of the winners. It was really quite a fun episode. It ran almost twice as long as normal, so just short of 2 hours to cover everything we needed to cover. And it had the single highest number of live watchers on YouTube that we've had here in a long time, maybe ever, for any episode of Pod Save Chocolate and the Chocolate Life live. And then it is, as a matter of fact, in the week after the episode streamed, it's one of the most highly watched on YouTube. I only get YouTube stats. I have to go in separately to LinkedIn and Facebook in order to figure out what the watches are there. But it's a fun episode. If you like chocolate, you're at all aware of the Craft Chocolate Challenge. And if you're interested in entering the challenge next year, you can learn a lot about the way the judging is done and who the participants are and things like that. So I really do recommend going to do it. You can find resources about the event. So I really do recommend that. And with that, all kinds of stuff. Let's jump into today's episode. But before we do, we have a hello from Frank. Frank Manteau of Mill Treats. Frank is watching from LinkedIn today. Howdy, Frank. It was a pleasure to see you in Albuquerque here at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest. We've been talking, for 2 or 3 years, early. So pre the Chocolate Life Live on Clubhouse is when we first started to converse with each other. So it's 2021. It's been a while now. And I'm looking forward to scheduling an episode with an interview. Everybody will get to meet you. We'll have a chance to learn about the business, and then I'm going to do a live tasting of a couple of your products. So I'm really looking forward to getting that done soon. All right. So, the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest. Now, I want to let you know that this is listed in addition to a live stream. It's also listed as Travelogue. And one of the reasons why it's listed as a Travelogue is that most of the introduction here is actually my my drive from Prescott, Arizona, which is where I currently live, to Albuquerque for the festival. I mean, you know, I don't want to spend too much time in this part of it, but it was, if you're at all interested in that, it was fun to write. It was fun to think about writing it as I was driving. I mean, I haven't been in this part of the country by car since I was a child, and traveling through now these are not my photos of the petrified forest, but driving, seeing the sign for the Petrified Forest National Park reminded me that I had been on this road as a child, and it was fun to reflect back on that. As I say in my post, um, I was on this road before the Eagles and Jackson Brown had an opportunity to put Winslow, Arizona, on the map as an iconic pop culture destination. That's how long ago it has been. And so, I'm sitting here trying to remember the lyrics as I'm driving down the road. It was just a lot of fun to do it. I made the drive alone. So the first part of the post today is about that, and then also talking a little bit about my arrival in in Albuquerque. And so this year, 2024, is the 14th Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival. The organizers, this gentleman, Dean Strober, his wife Nella, they have a company called Blue River Productions. They do other things besides this festival, and their background is theater theater and choreography, music, dance. And having been to a lot of chocolate festivals and food festivals over the course of the last 20 some odd years, I think that that background in theater and um, non event management, that's not where they come from, shows in the way they approach the organizing of the event. And so not only were every single one of the staff and volunteers that I ran to just incredibly professional, dedicated. They were friendly. They're proactive, helpful. I mean, it was really, really quite nice to be back of house on this one as a presenter, and I think that that attitude shows through everywhere in the way the festival is organized. So, in addition to it being chocolate and coffee primarily, there is wine, there is beer, and a whole range of complimentary foods. So, barbecue rubs and ice cream and popcorn and pickles. I didn't see any chocolate covered pickles or pickles with chocolate, although we did have pickles and things like that. So it was a fun. So you could come to the festival and see a lot of things other than just chocolate. In addition, there was music all day long, both days. So multiple stages where music is going on, and it's a pretty big festival area. It's normally one large building. This year there was two buildings in addition to outdoors. And one challenge associated with being outdoors is that Saturday morning it was in the 30s and blowing, and it was cold. So some outdoor things got moved indoors. I ended up having to talk over a music performance during my first class, and it was a challenge as things were getting set up. But as you can see, I mean, so like 230 vendors. I mean, a lot of exhibitors are on this list here, and then you can see that there is an event schedule with chock-a-block both Saturday and Sunday. So there's lots to do. Some of these events are free to the public, so open to anybody who wants to just sit down, and some of the events are open, are ticketed and require an additional payment. What I really, really loved about this is I'll go to this image here. I mean, this was not taken right immediately on opening, but this gives you an idea of it was busy. And it was busy most of the time. But even though there appears like there are a lot of people here, there's also a lot of room to wander around. So I showed up at about 10:15. So I was in my room, my classroom setting up at 10 o'clock when this opens. So I had to run to get something at about 10:15. And this is 10:15 on a Saturday morning, right, in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I've only been to once before in recent times, and so I don't know much about the city of Albuquerque, the town of Albuquerque, however big it is. And there were a lot of people there. And even at 10:15, so 15 minutes after the place opens, there are people queuing up in front of stands, very, very calmly, very, very quietly, very, very patiently, um, asking questions. And, in talking with the vendors, a lot of people said these people started purchasing product immediately, and which is a great thing because for every vendor, the bigger the festival get, the more coffee vendors there are, the more chocolate vendors there are. There is perhaps fewer dollars to spread among everybody. And so just from the gate, I mean, this is just really well organized. And so this is just a general set in the large building. This is of the bar and cocoa stand, which is in the smallest of the three rooms that are there. And this is of a Tucson, Arizona chocolate maker, Monsoon, a gentleman named Adams Krantz, who I've known early in my chocolate history through some connection in the Fancy Food Show in Portland, Oregon. And so you get an idea that um, it is um, it is well attended and people are having a good time going about. So that's what I want to say. There was a vibe here because it wasn't just a chocolate crowd and it wasn't just a craft chocolate crowd. So it was a mix of people, lots of families, lots of small children. You could, if you wanted to and you needed to, there were wheelchairs available for rent. There were little trolleys where if you had a couple of kids, you could put kids in and you could put everything you purchased into the trolley. I mean, it's just really well thought out, organized, and inviting. Yeah, and I'm sure that the organizers, so Dean and crew, have learned some really, really important lessons over the course of the last 14 years. It was a lot of fun. So before we get to the next thing I want to say, um, so I want to say good morning to Mark and Yuri from Blue Spruce Chocolates. Although Mark, I don't know if Yuri is back from New York yet. I know that she was in New York on Tuesday during the episode where we talked about, and congratulations on your win in the Craft Chocolate Challenge. And I'm really, really sorry I messed up. Both of your labels say not quite white, right? Is the first, not quite white chocolate as the first thing. And I picked up the wrong one. And so we talked about the sesame tahini episode when it was really the passion fruit, the maracuya chocolate, which is the one that won the award. I know you know that, but I did update the episode post to let people know it was my bad. But I do want to congratulate you on that. Used to live in Albuquerque, went to UNM undergraduate. The Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival is an amazing space. Yeah, they're at Expo New Mexico, which is quite a remarkable space, sort of in that part of Albuquerque. So it was fun to be there, and thanks for that shout out. I want to say good morning to Duncan. Well, Duncan Armstrong. It's evening because Duncan is in the London area. And hey, Duncan. So for everybody, Duncan, I know Duncan because he is the one who invited me in to become the technical editor at International Confectionery Magazine. He recently left International Confectionery Hand Media for another opportunity. And it's been a real pleasure to get to know Duncan and to work with Duncan over the last 3 years now. And I wish you the best in your upcoming venture. I also want to give a quick shout out to Grace Lapsis. I mean, I have known more about her husband Troy for quite some time. He was an original member of the Chocolate Life, I want to say back in 2008, 2009, 2010. I mean, we have corresponded, but we never met in person until the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival this year. So I had a chance to get to meet Troy. And Troy and his wife, Grace, good morning, Grace. Thank you very much where we were the three judges for the Guittard chocolate dessert baking competition. And I'll get to that towards the end. But Grace, good morning. It was great to meet you after all these years following the chocolate life. Absolutely, back at you. It was really, really a pleasure to finally meet you, but also going in and being a judge for the first time for me, and knowing that you and Troy had been judges in the past, and so veterans could show me the ropes. And we really, all three of us, had very, very different approaches to the judging, which I thought was, very, very instructive. It was a learning experience for me. And when I can have fun and learn at the same time and meet people, right, that I've known of, it's just been a fabulous way to spend some time. So it was really, really great for me. And yeah, no, appreciate the shout out. Mark, as you know, you've been a huge supporter of my work for quite some time. I've been a huge fan of your work for quite some time. And that's one of the reasons, that's one of the things that Pod Safe Chocolate is all about. It's one of the things that the Chocolate Life is all about. And it's one of the reasons why we do what it is that we do, to grow an awareness in the industry, professionalism, and all these kinds of things. So absolutely, it's been a huge, huge thing. So, excuse me, I'm back in Prescott, and there is something in the air, some pollen that I'm not used to. I'm not normally have any allergies or anything like that, but for some reason this year, it's hit me, and so again, please excuse me for that. So one of the things, so in addition to being a participant in the festival, just somebody who's walking through the festival. I was a judge, as I mentioned, for the Guittard dessert baking competition. I forget the exact name for it, but I was also giving 4 tasting classes. So I had classes at 11:15 and 1:15 on Saturday, and 11:15 and 1:15 on Sunday, and they were the same items were being presented in all 4 classes. And I'll go over that. I'm going to spend more time going over that aspect of my participation, because it was where I was focused for this. And it may be, I think, really, really useful for people who are watching this to get a better sense of, again, who I am as a judge, and when I give my tasting classes, how it is that I approach my entire approach to tasting and chocolate appreciation. So I'm going to spend most of my time thinking on that. But what I did do is I arranged my trip so that I could arrive early on Friday afternoon, because that was the setup day. And I knew that I was going to be, okay, I've got 11, I've got these 2 classes on Saturday, these 2 classes on Sunday. On Saturday afternoon, I'm moderating a panel discussion on the art and business of chocolate. And on Sunday, after my 2 classes, I'm going to be judging. And so I have almost no free time, which is unfortunate, because I want to spend as much time as I can walking around, meeting people, and, tasting stuff, right? And spending money. And so I showed up early on Friday. So during the setup day, what I could do, the first setup day, what I could do is I could walk around the venue, become familiar with where everybody was, make sure I understood what was going on in my classroom, meet the people I would be working with to make sure the class got done. But most importantly, be able to walk up to a stand, and if there was somebody there that I wanted to talk to, I would be able to have an opportunity to discuss things with them. And so by the time I got there, the people from Mashpee, so Mashpee is in Ecuador, but they have a distribution facility, which is on the east coast of the United States. I first ran into the people at Mashpee in, I want to say, maybe 2017, 2016 in Chocoa in Amsterdam. So I've been aware of what the company and what it is they're doing for quite some time. I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody in person. And they were also entered into the Craft Chocolate Challenge. So we got, it was this nice convergence of things. To have an opportunity to talk with them. In addition, perhaps one of the best known chocolate makers, so from the bean chocolate makers, craft chocolate makers in Albuquerque, is Eldora. So I had a chance to go. I've known of them. When I was in Albuquerque a year ago, I didn't have enough time between trains in order to go up there. So it was nice to be able to meet the people in person put names to faces, faces to names, and all that kind of stuff. So it was really really careful. But by the time I got there, they were set up and gone. And the same thing was true on Friday afternoon with Bar and Cocoa. So many people will know Bar and Cocoa is a distributor and online retailer of craft chocolate. They're located in the Denver area. Of course, I've known of them. I've never met Pashmina in person, and so it's a great opportunity to have great opportunity to see their current product line and have a chance again just to introduce, but just to figure out what the layout is, to understand where things are, where I want to go back to, and as a part of this, it's like, okay, so I had this really, really wonderful connection with a chef by the name of En Ming Shu. I know En Ming, she was involved in the World Pastry Forum. We probably met for the first time, I want to say in 2004 in Las Vegas, either during the World Pastry Forum or a national and World Pastry Team Championship. And then I had an opportunity in 2008. I took my daughter to Nashville, Tennessee, and En Ming is one of the photographs that I have with my daughter Alex at that event, along with Stéphane Glacier and Jacques Torres and Jean-Philippe Maury. I mean, it was really really special, and I hadn't seen En Ming in person since 2010, and so walking up to her stand, a company called SIP. SIP exclamation mark extraordinary drinking chocolate, having a chance to see En Ming in person, get to meet her sister who I'd heard about for quite some time, her husband, was all of that was just really really important. I had don't remember the last time I saw Arcelia Gallardo of Mission Chocolate. It was probably when I was in um, so it would have been when I was in Brazil for Chocolate Bahia in 2022. So July of 2022, I'm thinking. So I haven't had a chance to see Arcelia since then. Maybe in Sao Paulo afterwards. It was good to speak in touch with her. I'd been, corresponding with Peter McFadden, who is one of the founders of Argent Cove in Nicaragua for quite some time. I don't remember. I mean, years. And he reminded me that the reason why they're in Nicaragua is partly based on a recommendation that I made to them. So for me, reconnecting is really, really important part of what it is that I'm doing. It's one of the reasons why I go to Europe. I haven't been to the Salon de Chocolat in Paris since 2018, because there are people that this is my only opportunity to meet them, right? Because many of them do not come to the United States. If I want to meet them, I have to go to where they are in order to do it. So it's really, really important for me to do this. I also want to suggest that if anybody is going to festival for the first time, and you have an opportunity to go to that festival on multiple occasions, one of the things that I learned very early on is number one, what you want to do is you want to be very deliberate in terms of the way you approach going to a show. So, for example, the first thing that I will do when I go to a show is I always do the outside edges of all of the rooms. It turns out that newer vendors, maybe first time vendors, they tend to be against the walls. And so, one of the ways to find new things is to go around the walls. And then to be fairly disciplined in just terms of walking every single row so that you know who is there and where they are, and you can put into your mind what you want to go and see again. Because if you walk and stop and then walk and stop and then walk and stop, you may find yourself towards the end of the day and there's not enough time to go see everything. And you don't necessarily want to see everything, right? You want to see the things that attract your eye. And so being disciplined and going back and back and forth up the row, if somebody comes and says hello to you, you go do that. But when you do very large shows, for example, like the Fancy Food Show, um, that kind of discipline really really helps. I've also found that it works really really well for smaller shows, because if you're negotiating a pretty thick crowd like this, it can be a challenge to get the attention of the people you want to speak to at every stand right away. Right. So make sure that you go and see everything, note where they are, right, and then come back to them. So you have an opportunity to make sure at least you know where everything is and you know who you want to see, and you don't get stuck and it's an hour left at the end of the show and you're only halfway through because you've been having a good time talking to the people that you're doing. So just a real quick um, way to think about understanding going to a show. And this is especially true of a consumer show like this. I think, as I may have mentioned earlier, I know it's something that I wrote, but there was a different feeling to this crowd compared with the Northwest Chocolate Festival in Seattle. I think that the Northwest Chocolate Festival caters more to a more knowledgeable or at least more committed audience, or committed to the idea of craft chocolate audience, a more and people who know more. And so the people who are there sort of occupy the space and they ask questions in a very, very different way. Because they have this base level of understanding, and they may know a little bit more about what it is that they're interested in, and they tend to focus on it. Here, yeah, I think it's a much more a general audience. Um, they may be a little less knowledgeable about craft chocolate, um, and so there's an interest in learning. And this is one of the things that Dean and his crew did very well. Hawaii was the featured territory this year, so there's a bunch of Hawaiian chocolate, a bunch of Hawaiian um, coffee. There was a dedicated chocolate tasting area just for Hawaii. Classes every day just on Hawaiian products. There was a chocolate and coffee tasting class, ticketed class. There were chocolate and beer tasting classes. I had the grand tasting classes, which we'll get into in just a moment. And so that uh, in addition to all the open events where people could go and learn stuff, so it was. Uh, it had a different feel to it. Having been to the classes at the Northwest Chocolate Festival, having been to classes at the Salon de Chocolat, having been to classes many, many places, this just had a different feel to it. And it was perhaps a little more open and inviting to the uninitiated. And I think that may talk a little bit about the Albuquerque market. I think it's sophisticated when it comes to food. I mean, there's an understanding of, we know hatch chilies come from here, and we've got red and green ones, and if anybody asks you for Christmas in New Mexico, it means red and green sauce at the same time, right? They do, fabulous pinon pine nuts. There's a lot of stuff which is indigenous, so there is a real food culture there, right? And it's important to know that. But in general, there is a lot of what I think of as hometown chocolate. For example, there's a small outfit been around for 30 years called Theobroma Chocolatier. They're using an industrial chocolate, but if you look at the product that they're making and you understand the success being around 30 years, maybe second or third generation over the course of that, you realize what they're doing is they're creating product that the locals love, and they're doing it day in and day out. And the way they approach things is very, very much catering to what they know the audience in Albuquerque is. And at the same time, you've got a company like Eldora, which is doing newfangled craft bean to bar stuff, which is not necessarily something that everybody knows about yet. And so it was really, really cool being there, and understanding that dynamic. Um, it was for me, it was one of the highlights of being there over the course of the over the 2 days. So I want to take a quick reset to say to welcome everybody to Pod Safe Chocolate. Um, this is episode 34. We're looking at the 2024 Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest, which was held in Albuquerque, New Mexico last weekend. I was there. I was giving a couple of classes. And before we continue with this episode, just if you're watching on YouTube, please give a thumbs up on the episode, subscribe to the channel. And if you're not a member of the Chocolate Life, please go ahead and do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a quick break. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a rough cut. I mean, this is not even the finished video. This is a rough cut of something which was produced by the organizers. And on the other side, just give you a flavor of things. On the other side of this, I'll come back and I'll talk about the classes that I was giving.
Here with the man, the myth, the legend, the man that is responsible for putting all these amazing coffee and chocolate vendors together. This is Dean, and I would like for him to explain his amazing venue.
Thank you so much. So my wife Linda and I created this thing 14 years. It's just a bit of a pipe dream, and we got the ideas and the support of all of our local chocolatiers and coffee roasters here in Albuquerque, and it has grown into this.
Well, I'd say it's very much a reality for a lot of people, including me here. Yeah. And how was it putting your first one together versus where it's at today? I mean, this has probably grown and evolved so much. So.
We've grown. Originally, we had 38 vendors, all local. This year, we're looking at about 220 coming in from all over the world. Very much of an international event at this point.
Yeah. And why don't you show us around to some of the vendors?
Sure. We can walk. I mean, no, but right here, you've got people from Hawaii and Ecuador and Nicaragua all flew in to take part, experiencing Albuquerque for the first time. But yeah, let's go take a look and see what we find. Yeah.
And it's a little crowded, but as you can see, that's how many people love it here.
Yes, exactly.
And
it all depends on what your mood is. So if you're looking for some straight up Hawaiian chocolate or Hawaiian coffee, you can find that right over here. La Gulu, they're over here for the first time. They've got fantastic chocolate bars that are filled with wine and beer and different.
Wine and beer. That's exactly. Really interesting.
Yeah, amazing stuff. And then so there's also great coffee and more Hawaiian chocolate over there, and some tea from Sip Sorcery. So it's just. It's
kind of amazing. It's like literally walking into Willy Wonka's chocolate factory, except for they also have coffee too, which is very much so a plus. And wine and beer.
But no, and this is just the smallest room of the festival too.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely go out, we'll explore and show you. And you guys just, if I get, pulled away.
I know you're very busy.
Exactly. So I'll probably get pulled away.
Yeah.
And you guys just explore.
I'll be happy to show you guys all what there is to explore here, and we're getting a lot of coverage down here. And if you are in Albuquerque today, come out, check it out. It is something that you don't want to miss. And if you do miss it this year, there's going to be next year, the year after that, and many, many, many more years to come.
Yeah. I'd give it a 10.
Awesome.
It seems fun, it's pretty, and
awesome.
To see all these people.
Give it a 10 too.
There we go.
We're here every year, beginning of April. Yeah, so come on out.
Wow, guys, thank you. All right, thank you.
So a sense for the kind of diversity that was there and what was going on. It was an appreciative crowd, not the most knowledgeable crowd that I've ever been, but that was part of the fun for me as an educator and somebody who's putting together all of the classes, was that it was an opportunity to speak to a group which had a different level of understanding than many of the groups that I speak to. And as a result of that, it was a lot of fun for me. So here's the room. Let's go and sure why my mic went off there for a second. But here's the room that we were set up in. It's 3 hard walls, 1 soft wall. So there was music playing in the other room, so we could hear that. So that was a challenge the first morning. Here's a little close up on that room. In the monitor in the background, what I did is I used the screensaver on my Mac, and what I was doing is I was playing photographs that I had taken over the course of since 2003. Well, not since 2003. That I photographs that I had taken since 2003 on my travels around the world. And as I would turn my back and see an image which I thought was interesting, I'd let people know, hey, this was taken in Bolivia, or this was taken in Ecuador, or this was taken in Italy or someplace else, and explain what was going on. Now, here's a close-up of the table setup. So the room has 6 tables. Each table has 6 places on it, so 36 people for tasting per class. All of the classes were sold out in advance, which is really, really quite wonderful. For me, it's always one of the things we were about. Is anybody going to show up to my class? All sold out in advance, which actually says a lot about the kind of education that people are looking for here. So they had to pay general admission to get into the event, and then pay an additional amount for a 75-minute class. A lot of fun. So, and then I think we've got a close-up on the tasting mat. But what I want to do is I want to point out on every single table, right, for each one of the 4 sessions, there's a bowl in the center. And in every bowl, there is a fresh cocoa pod. and there's a mallet. So the way we started out every single one of these tasting classes was for somebody at the table to bash the cocoa pod. I used a knife to make the process easier by creating an incision all the way around in each pod. But the first thing everybody did was they opened up a pod. They passed the pod around the table, got to smell it. I encouraged everybody to go take a seed with the pulp on it and suck the pulp off and just get a sense for what it is. And so there was an opportunity here to talk about, oh, all the pods look different. Why is that? Why do the pods look different? We didn't see people changing pods across tables, which could have been interesting, although it would have been disruptive because the pulp would have tasted different in most of the pods. So that could have been interesting. But we said, this is where chocolate comes from. Every single bar of chocolate that you eat starts off as one of these pods. They open up the seeds. They pull the seeds off the placenta. We could talk about fermentation and drying. Right. There's also, for every single placement, there's a bowl of cocoa beans. These have been roasted so that if there are any microbiology on the outside, we don't have to worry about people eating them and run the risk of people getting sick. But the beans are roasted, and then there's also nibs. And so I'm able to go through and I say, this is where chocolate starts, here's a fresh pod. And by the way, thanks to Meridian Cocoa in Portland, Oregon, Meridian provided the pods, they provided the beans, they provided the nibs for this. And also there is some undeodorized cocoa butter and some chocolate liquor on the table. And so again, thanks to Gino and the team at Meridian for doing that, Dean. It was great to be able to have that range of products to start this tasting class. And so we're going from the fresh bean, fresh seed into fresh pods, through roasted beans to nibs. And one of the things that I quickly learned is that the beans and the nibs were different varieties and had been roasted differently. And so we can also ask the question of, why do these things taste different? Why do the roasted beans taste different from the roasted nibs? Well, they're different genetics, right? They're fermented differently, they're roasted differently. We would expect them to taste differently. And so starting off, it was just fabulous. To be able to start off a tasting class having that variety of product available. So everybody's got a bottle of sparkling water to go with, and it's, and by the time we actually get to the tasting component of this, where we're 25, 30 minutes into the class, going through the pods and the beans and the nibs and the liquor, right? And just going through that progression and giving people an understanding of things, it provided just this really, really strong foundation. So even though there are like 10 chocolates on the board, right, we haven't started yet tasting the chocolate. And one of the reasons why it took so long to get through this is that we'd purchased copies of my book on Amazon, and I had said, listen, I'm going to give a signed copy of the book to whoever I think asks the most interesting question. So, I'm not above shameless shilling and bribery, not for selling my book. I don't have any economic interest in the sales of my book at this moment, but as a way of getting people to participate. And so there were lots of little things, little cards, which could be exchanged at the merch table for things to, here, ask a question. Hey, get one of these cards. And we can go and encourage participation. And it worked really well, to the point where I'm sort of wondering if we're going to get through everything before the end of the session. And so it was really, really cool to do that. So if you look a little more closely, again, what you can do is you can go to this post on the Chocolate Life afterwards, and you can zoom in more closely on these images. But what you see is we have 4 chocolates from Guittard. And Guittard is one of the main sponsors of the event and of the festival. And so they generously donated chocolate for use in the tasting event. So what we do is we have a roughly, on the left, there's a 60% or thereabouts semi/bittersweet chocolate. The chocolate next to that is a Hawaiian dark chocolate. I think it's around 55%, the Coca Cola 55%. To the right of that is there's Soleil d'Or, which is a 38% milk chocolate. And to the right is white chocolate. I don't recall which white chocolate that it was. To the right of that, we have 2 chocolates from Eldora. The one on the left is an 85%. Yeah, here it is. Let's see. 85% dark. The beans are Ugandan from the Semiliki forest. And the one on the right is a 70% and from Cumba, Ecuador. So those are the chocolates we had there. We had a Hershey's Kiss. And we actually tasted that very early on. I said to people, I must love you because I'm giving it to you very early on. It's not the last thing you're tasting. It's not the last thing in your mouth. But the goal was we tasted this with the Guittard milk chocolate. And we had a chance to talk about the history of milk chocolate, what Milton Hershey's genius was, not that he made great chocolate, but he made it inexpensive. And we got to talk about those and sort of introducing a little bit of the history and a little bit of the technology of chocolate making into this. We normally wouldn't have a chance to cover it. And then, just say, okay, where is that tang in the chocolate come from? What's that all about? It's really easy to taste that tang, the butyric acid in the Hershey's milk chocolate, which is a result of an industrial accident 125 years ago that we're living with today. But when you taste it directly against the Soleil d'Or, it's really, really quite remarkable how obvious it is. And you can say, okay, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but it's interesting, and where does that come from? So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to. I love throwing Hershey's Kisses into tastings for exactly that reason. Because, and everybody's looking at this, and we're like, "Do we have to taste it?" So that was interesting, as well, the reaction to it for the most part. One of the classes, even though we were serving alcohol, we had 3 children, and under the age of 10, I think, maybe under the age of 12. And so their reactions to these things were very, very different as well. So it was very, very interesting to gauge it. You also see 2 chocolates from Argenco. So Argenco is from Nicaragua. On the left is this one. You're not going to be able to read the label, but this is a 70% dark chocolate, but it has banana, cinnamon, and cloves in it. It won the Chocolate Alliance Awards 2021 gold. And on the right is a 70% Mombacho, which won a 2021 again Chocolate Alliance Gold Award. It's a single origin Nicaraguan chocolate. And these are the 2 chocolates that I used for the wine pairings. So we'll get in a little more depth in terms of those. I want to introduce the chocolate before I continue. I don't have, this was the way it's packaged, a company called Mademoiselle Miel. They are local to Albuquerque. And this is a cocoa butter with oats. So I suppose a oat milk, quote unquote, oat milk white chocolate. But it's sweetened with maple sugar. And there's rosemary and pine nuts on it. And we just wanted something which was more of a confection, and very, very different from the other white chocolate that was which was on the presentation. And then finally, the empty spot is this chocolate from Madre in Hawaii. And so this one was used to make a hot chocolate in water because we weren't certain about vegetarians and vegans. And we didn't want to worry about alternative milks and nut allergies and all that kind of stuff. So what we did is we had a blender in the room. We put a cup of hot water in the blender. We put a bar and a half of chocolate in the blender. We put some more hot water in, just that's the technical term. We mixed it all together and then put a cup of hot chocolate at the end for everybody to do it. And then the final taste of chocolate that we had for everybody was the Cocolaco from Guittard, which is sort of like a warm, comforting hug. It's thicker, and so you're biting through it. It's one of their 500-gram bars, and so there's something about the texture of biting through it, and the flavor, which is chocolatey, and then fudgy, which is just it was unusual as a tasting experience compared with all the rest of them, but people left with this wonderful just flavor in the mouth. So it was a wonderful range of products to work with, and we could jump back and forth and talk about things, and there was enough so that people could have fun with the tastings and the pairings. But people who know me, so this is where I want to jump in. People who know me, right? I may have been in one of my classes, or there are a couple of episodes of the Chocolate Life Live and Pod Safe Chocolate where I discuss this, is that I am a huge fan of what I call the comparative tasting method as opposed to the descriptive tasting method. And so a descriptive tasting method is, I hope everybody will understand exactly what it says. You put something in your mouth and you try to describe what it is that you're tasting. Now, in order to do that, it requires a lot of experience. You need to have, if you want to identify passion fruit in a chocolate, you had to have tasted passion fruit beforehand in order to understand, oh, this is passion fruit and chocolate. All right. If you've never tasted it before, or you don't have a description, because although there are QR codes so you can figure out more about this company, there are no descriptions of what people are tasting. So we don't know. And I don't tell people in advance what it is that they're tasting. And so when you want to become a certified chocolate taster, or when you want to go through a wine WSET course and become a master of wine or something like that, what you're doing is you're training your taste memory. That is the important part of what it is you're doing. If you've never tasted something before, you're not going to be able to recognize it. You have no idea what it is. If you've never tasted it before, you can't recognize it. And so, if you've never tasted a Bordeaux, you're not going to be able to recognize this wine as a Bordeaux style. If you've never had a Beaujolais Nouveau, you can't recognize a Beaujolais Nouveau. Right? And so as you go and taste something 20, 30, 50, 100 times, in the descriptive tasting method, what you need to do is you need to go, oh, here is a flavor that I recognize, or here is a characteristic that I recognize, and I'm going to assign that to a pigeonhole in my memory so that when I taste it again, I can go, oh, I have tasted this or something like this before. And then what I can do is I can go retrieve that. I go, oh, this is what it is. And then you can articulate it. And this is what descriptive tasting and teaching the descriptive tasting method is all about. It's all about that process of just training your memory through repetition, repetition, repetition. And the method that I use, right, is called comparative. So I use a comparative tasting method. And it's based on the fact that, many of you may know that I am a graduate of the Rhode Island School of Design. And I have a BFA in photography. This is what I did before I got into tech and chocolate. And I was introduced to the work of Joseph Albers, and specifically his series Homage to the Square, where it's usually four squares of color within each other. And Albers' thesis is that if you change any one of the colors, your perception of all of the colors changes. And so it turns out that the human nervous system, that's the way the human nervous system works. It's really good about saying, well, that sweater is bluer than the sky, and you are farther away than that person is, and this car is moving faster than that person is. So the human nervous system is built around this notion of comparison. And so that's the way I structure my tasting classes. And so the idea being is that the order that you smell things in and the order that you taste things in are going to affect, right, your perception of the aromas and the flavors. So we started off with the two chocolates from El Toro. We put the 85% in the left hand and the 70% in the right hand. And the first thing we did was we smelled the 70%. And what you do is, like the SCA coffee wheel, which I referred to, if you think about the way the wheel is constructed, it's more general sense impression on the inside, and you get more detailed as you move toward the outside. And that's where you start. You put something in, and what you say, all you want to say to yourself, is it sweet? Right? Do I smell fruit? Am I smelling, earth or roast or anything like that? What are your general sense impressions on the aroma? Just what are they? And then what you do is you go to the other one and you go, how is it different from the first one you taste? Well, is it darker? Is it roastier? What are you getting on this one? And it turns out that it's easier, I find, for most people, especially people who don't have any background, to be able to go, oh, I can recognize the differences. Okay. Then what you do is you take a deep breath of one, in this case, the 70, right? Move it, let the breath out, and immediately take in a breath of the 85. So you have the aroma molecules from the 70 in your nose, and then you breathe in the 85, and it turns out, oh my, all of a sudden it smells very, very different. What are the differences? right? Does it smell toastier? Does it, what are the differences? I mean, and it's easy to describe the differences without having to assign, oh, it's smoky or it's something else. It's just, oh, it tastes different or it smells different. What's the difference? And then you do it the other way around. You put the 85 on your nose, deep breath, let it go, and immediately the 70. What's the difference? And what's interesting is that it turns out that there are differences, and the differences are noticeable if you're paying attention. You may not be able to describe what those differences are, but you know their difference. And why this is important is because there's sort of this general idea that when you're putting together a tasting, you always start with the lightest and you move towards the darkest. So if you're doing a wine tasting, you're going to start with whites and ends up with red. If you're doing a chocolate tasting, you're going to start with the lighter percentages and go to the heavier percentages. Maybe you organize all the milks together and all the darks together, but you work in a particular direction. And no, that's not the way to do it. So if you ever sit down, this is a piece of advice I gave to everybody. If you ever sit down and somebody says, do it this way, you should do it that way, but then you should also think about other combinations, because what you'll do is you'll find you have different perceptions of them, right? And that's really important to know. Now, we then tasted the 70%, right? And then tasted the 85%. And in this particular case, the 70% was more straightforward chocolate, a tiny bit of fruit. I'm doing this from memory, a tiny bit, because I don't have the chocolate with me, a tiny bit of fruit on the beginning. And then it got to this chocolate note. And then the 85%, the Semiliki Forest, Uganda, was just, you put it, it's like just explodes with fruit. And the question becomes, what kind of fruit, right? So you don't necessarily want to go to a specific fruit away. Oh, we know fruit. I can describe it's citric acid is where the fruitiness, the fruity acidity comes through, or where it comes from is from the citric acid. And then it's red, right? And maybe we might think of it as tart, which somebody said, right? Fruit acid, for me, that's tart. And then we can go, well, is it blackberry? Is it raspberry? Is it cherry? And we can start, is it fresh? Is it dried? We can start guiding through the way we might get to more specific impressions from the more general impression. And the goal of the comparative exercise for me, as opposed to the descriptive exercise, right, is the goal of going through the descriptive approach is to be able to identify things, right? We put something in our mouth and we go, that's what it is. The goal of the comparative method for me is to understand at some point you've got these two chocolates in your mouth right in front of you and you go, well, which one of these do I like more? This one is fruitier, this one is more chocolatey, the texture of this as opposed to the texture of this. You can say, you very, very quickly get to the point of this is what I like, right? And I think for most chocolate people, that's what they want to know. When they get a new chocolate, they can put it in their mouth and go, oh, I like this, and this is why I like it. This is what about it that I like. And it also gets you to the point of being able to say, listen, I like this chocolate because, for example, it reminds me of visiting my favorite aunt on Martha's Vineyard, and we used to go to Chilmark Chocolate, and I was a kid in the candy store, right? And I, as a professional chocolate critic, can tell you objectively that Chilmark chocolate is not the best chocolate in the world. But if you grew up on it and it has these memories, it might be the best chocolate for you. And what's really important is to be able to understand why we like it. I think it's more important for people to understand why they like what they like, what is about it that they like, and be able to identify it. And then be able to hold on to that, right? To be able to say, well, you can't really like chocolate because you like white chocolate. And you can say, well, I like this chocolate because it reminds me of, being with my favorite aunt as a child, and own that. I mean, it's really, really important to own it. No one can don't let anybody take that away from you. Don't anybody try to tell you. So we had some people who were craft chocolate people. I mean, there was a microbiologist in one time where we're talking about, the details of fermentation in one session. It was all over the place in terms of things, which was really made it fun for me because I was getting questions that were very, very basic, like, is white chocolate legally really chocolate? Is white chocolate really chocolate? The answer is yes, white chocolate is really chocolate, legally chocolate, no matter what you might emotionally think, right? If it's made with the ingredients that the FDA says, right, are part of the standard of identity for white chocolate, it can be legally labeled as chocolate. So let's get that over with. To these questions about, the microbiology of fermentation piles, which was, again, a lot of fun for me. I don't normally get it. And, I'm going through this tasting in a particular order. And what having these questions, these different questions from everybody, meant that even though by the time I got to the fourth one, or the fourth class, I mean, this was the fourth time I had done this tasting with exactly the same things. And as I explained to everybody, when I arrived on Saturday morning, I had tasted none of the chocolate here. I was not. I mean, I probably tasted the the Soleil d'Or, which is the guittard milk, in the past, right? But it's been a while since I've had it. I hadn't tasted either of the Eldoras. Can't remember the last time I had a Hershey's Kiss. I didn't eat a Hershey's Kiss the entire time I was here. I hadn't had any of these chocolates, and I hadn't had any of the wines. And so, for me, it was exploration. So by the time I got to the fourth class, the questions were what was keeping it interesting for me. Right. And the different questions in different ways, it's just at different levels, and trying to, I'm in the middle of my narrative and somebody asks a question. I have to answer the question and get back to the narrative. And how is that question going to change what it is, right, that I'm going to say? And how is maybe I've already answered the question partially and I have to go back to it. It was just an enormous amount of fun. Right. So we also had, it was also fun to go through the wine and chocolate pairings. Again, we had two chocolates. This is a banana, cinnamon, and clove from Argencova, Nicaragua, 70% single bean from Mobacho in Nicaragua. We have two wines. Both of them are from St. Clair, which is a mark inside the Lescombe winery brand. This one is a 12% sweet red wine blend. Nativo is the name of it. Now, both of these wines are a little sweeter than I would normally like to consume, but it turns out they were great for pairing. And the other one is the Malvasia Bianca, also a 12%, again from St. Clair, which is part of the Lescombe family. And so, taking the comparative method again, what we did is we started off with the 2 cups of wine in a hand, the white in the left and the red in the right, doesn't really matter. But we, smelled the red, smelled the white, general sense impression, then smell the red, smell the white, right? And it turns out that, man, right, doing that changes your perception of the flavors. And then you do it the other way around. Smell the white, smell the red, and oh, wow, it's very, very different. So then you take a little bit of the chocolate. We did the banana first, banana, cinnamon, clove first, a little bit of the chocolate in the mouth. You get it melted completely, move it around your mouth, and then take a little bit of the white wine. And so these are 2 dark chocolates and a white and a red wine, right? And then we went through the Mombacho and the red wine, and then we went back. So the Mombacho and the white wine, the banana and the red wine. And the idea being, oh my gosh, I mean, our perception of the wines and our perception of the chocolate taste really, really different, right? And in my case, my preference for all of these was the red wine, the Nativo, with the white chocolate, not with white chocolate, but the banana with the cinnamon and clove. And because all of a sudden, so the idea is, does the chocolate make the wine taste better? Does the wine make the chocolate taste better? Is the combination better than the sum of the parts? Is it neutral, or is it all of a sudden go ick, right? And so if we look at that rubric, what happens when you do for us, or for me especially, the banana, cinnamon, and clove with the red wine, all of a sudden revealed flavors in both of them that were incredibly different. So when we tried the white wine with the banana just popped. All of a sudden, whoa, it was really banana. So it was dehydrated banana on the back of it as in chunks. And so it just made the sweetness of the wine made the sweetness of the banana go huge. But there was something about the way the chemistry of the red wine interacted with the cinnamon and the clove and the banana that, wow, all of a sudden this is really, really complex and really, really interesting. It was a lot of fun to go and see that, and to be able to introduce, everybody in the room to this idea, except for the 3 underage people in the 4th class. It was an enormous amount of fun, I can tell you. We're getting to the end, and what I want to do is I want to talk about the last activity. So this is Sunday afternoon. It's 3:30, and after doing all these classes and having a chance to talk to all these people about all this chocolate and tasting all this stuff, I am a judge in a dessert competition. So here is a copy of the dessert judging form. It's blank, right? I have a list of entries. We ended up with 9 entries this year. I have to write their names, and then we're judging appearance, taste, and creativity with notes, right? And so initially what we're doing is we're doing a visual inspection. So this is the main part of the appearance. Then we sit down, and every single one of the entries is put in front of us one at a time. And as we're doing our individual judging, so this is Grace Lapsis, if you're still in, thank you very much for staying. And her husband Troy and I are going through our individual judging. We're doing everything on a scale of 1 to 5, right, in terms of appearance, taste, and creativity. And we're listening to each one of the entrants describe what they've made as we're doing the judging. And then each of us, the judges, so Troy first usually, me second, and then Grace wanted the final word. And what was fun for me is that each of us came to the way we approached the feedback that we were given. And I had just come off judging the Craft Chocolate Challenge, which is all about feedback. And so this is in my mind a lot. But each of us approached the kind of feedback we were giving and what we focused on in a different kind of way. So it was fun for me to taste all these things. It was instructional for me because Grace and Troy had been judges in the past, so it was a learning experience for me as well. And it was a lot of fun getting to know the entrants. So they're up on stage describing what it is we're doing. There's an open category where we have to do first and second, and then there's an under 18 category, a young baker category, which is a separate judging. And then, here is a photograph taken of the entrants after they've been judged. So there are 9 here. They're not in any particular order on the table. You can see that most of them are cakes, which makes an enormous amount of sense. But the one in the upper corner, which is up here, if you can see it, is an eclair. So we're talking about the texture of the cake. We're talking about the texture of the frosting. We're talking about the visual experience that we've got for all of these things. And we're trying to rate, these things, visual appearance, taste, and creativity on a scale of 1 to 5 for everything. So in the end, what happened was something that has been my experience that happens in most judging contexts, where the judges have an opportunity to speak with each other. And we took this upon ourselves. So rather than handing off our score sheets to some person randomly who was going to tally things up, what Troy and Grace and I did is we sat down and we said, okay, what's number 1? What's number 2? And, there were 2 entries for the youth vote. Where are we going to go there? And in my experience, number 1 is always obvious. It is a consensus pick. Everybody goes, oh, number 1, this is the one we all like. And in this case, it turned out to be like a plated dessert in terms of it had 4 elements in it. So there was a chocolate lava cake, which was spiced lightly with chili. On top of that was a coffee ice cream. There was a cinnamon whipped cream on the side. And then there was a pine nut crumble over the top. So very, very ambitious. Just challenge to serve, all put the ice cream, put all these elements together. And, hands down, all 3 of us said, from a creativity perspective, from a taste perspective, it was, for us, the obvious winner. Troy had his comments and said, the whipped cream component didn't seem like it fit completely. Maybe there's a better way to integrate it. We talked about, whether the cake was overbaked or not and the moistness of it and things like that. And then just the flavor combinations, right? Which in the end, I think was for all 3 of us, the thing which we focused on. So that was the number 1. It was this sort of plated dessert. Now, in my experience, number 2 and number 3 are usually always obvious, right? Everybody, we say, yeah, this is obviously, second or third. And so we ended up, the negotiation between the 3 of us was we both agreed on the same things for the next two places, right? But which one of them is going to go into second place as opposed to third place? And so that's where being able to talk about what we valued as judges, in terms of what we valued as creativity, what we have valued as appearance, what we have valued as taste, what we valued, was really, really fun. And, if Grace, if you're still listening, maybe it's something you want to comment as well. But that's what was interesting for us. And in the end, what we ended up choosing for second place was the eclair. So it was a pâte à choux dough. It was baked, it was crispy, crunchy on the outside, soft on the inside. There was a caramel cremeux, maybe filling inside of it. I don't remember exactly. There was either a crispy caramel like a toffee, crispies on the outside of it. And that's the aspect of it that wasn't our favorite. The appearance could have been worked on a little bit better. And then there was a chocolate caramel drizzle on the outside. But the pâte à choux dough in the eclair is a really challenging thing to get the texture right. And it was perfect. And the combination of textures between the crackly caramel on the outside and the pâte à choux dough and the cream filling, absolutely wonderful. And, what we thought is, because we're sitting here doing it, doing this as a trio in which there's a different filling or something on the outside would, if you were to serve that, right, at a white tablecloth diner as a dessert, in addition to the first one, I mean, you would have no problems, right, if they were, the appearance aspects of it were to be dealt with. So these are amateur bakers. I mean, that's the important part. These are amateur bakers. They're paying for the privilege of entering this competition. I mean, there are prizes for first and second place. So it was good. So, there was something to like about all of them. I mean, sometimes, the cake was phenomenal, or the texture and the flavor of the frosting was phenomenal, or there was something about, you cut through the entire thing and just the overall textural combination of all the elements are wonderful. I mean, it was great. So the youth winner is this one down here. I hope you can see it. 12-year-old, right? Who's got a layer cake, and there's an orange confit between two of the layers. There's an orange buttercream between the other two layers. And on the top, there's an orange foam, and a different expression of orange is used in each one of those three layers. Right now, he did talk about, I think Miles was his name, did talk about, trying to stabilize the foam. And it turns out that in transit from home to the venue, is like the top was all over the place and it was pretty ugly looking. But the creativity which was expressed by the use of orange in all of these different ways, and it just, especially for a 12-year-old. I mean, you get the sense that as he grows bigger and he is got more fine motor control over things, that if he continues with this kind of creativity, he's got a real future as a pastry chef. It was, which was excited. And so it was a lot of fun. All of them were in the audience for the awards. We had a chance to talk to everyone, share our comments with the audience. Unfortunately, we didn't have a chance. Well, they came up to us afterwards and asked us questions about specific things that we had mentioned. And so having that opportunity was a lot of fun to do. As you might imagine, I'm looking forward to doing it again next year. And in case anybody wants to know, they can put April 5th and 6th, 2025 on their calendar for they can put April 5th and 6th, 2025 on the calendar for the next Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest. If you've never been to Albuquerque, never been to the Southwest, or looking for something to do, start thinking about it right now. Right. And as a part of that, what I want to be able to point out is that if you go to thechocolatelife.com right now, I do have a chocolate events and holidays calendar. I updated this. It says 10 days ago. I actually updated it yesterday. So it didn't take the number one position because I wanted this story to be number one. But one of the things that I have done is I've started looking at a lot more smaller and regional festivals. Right. So I think I added maybe 10 or 12 smaller regional festivals to this in the past couple of days. So including some things in 2025. But you can go through and you can go and look and find out on this page if there is a local festival you'd like to support. And if you know about a festival and it's not on this list, you can email me. Or if you're a member of the Chocolate Life, you can go down into the member discussion and you can add a festival. And I have added many of these festivals from members in the past. So I want to make this as comprehensive as possible. It's a challenge, as you might imagine, to manage how to keep it up to date, but it is something that I tried to do. It's a fascinating topic, and the more small festivals, maybe ones that are near you. I know that in speaking with Dustin Cornett, he's organizing the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. That's going to be happening in November 22nd and 23rd, and it's in the little town of Rushville, Indiana. You can find out information about it today. So it's a resource for everyone. Please, if you have information about one, let me know, and I'll make sure it's on the list. It's been a lot of fun to do the research, work to keep up to date, as you might imagine, but it's something we can crowdsource. So if you have one, please let me know. And with that, I want to say thank you very much to everyone who's joined me for the last hour. Nobody's done a thumbs up on the video, so if you're watching on YouTube, please do. Give this a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. If you're not a member of the Chocolate Life right now, what you can do is you can go to the Chocolate Life. Whoa, I'm logged in, and so, excuse me, I'm logged in. And so you can see it says account here because I'm logged in. But if what you do is you go to, if you're not a member, you'll see that it says join. So click on the join button and become a member of the Chocolate Life. There's always a free category. If you do have the resources to be able to financially support what I'm doing, again, I'm not taking ads. I don't do Patreon. I don't do any of those things. So your support is greatly appreciated. Yeah, that's it, except to say that this coming Tuesday, the episode of Pod Save Chocolate, the title is going to be The High Cost of Expensive Cocoa. So we all know that the cost of cocoa has shot through the roof in the last little while. And so what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about why that is the case. A lot of people have just been talking about it's going up and therefore you're going to be spending more for chocolate. But what are some of the reasons why the cost of chocolate, why the cost of cocoa is where it is? What does that mean in the short term and the long term? What does it mean for industrial chocolate? What does it mean for craft chocolate? What are some scenarios that might play out to help? Just an overview, and I hope to do it from a place that is not the place where most people are coming at it from. So yeah, that I'll say that now. I've got a couple more days to finish my research. And with that, I want to remind everybody, and I hope you get the sense, I had an enormous amount of fun at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest this past weekend. I've been to goodness knows how many festivals over the course of the last 20 years, a lot of them. And I had, I think, more fun right at this festival than I've had at most of the festivals that I've done in the past, even though I did more work at this festival than I have done at a lot of other festivals. I mean, there are festivals where, I'm busy, right? Not as busy as this, but it seemed more of a slog for some reason or another. And I have to hand it to Dean, Dean and Nella and all the team that put the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest together. Can't recommend it more highly. I hope to see you in Albuquerque in April in 2025. And in the meantime, remember, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Ciao, everyone.